Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Empire Sports Talk. I am your host, Roman Gennaro. This is officially the start of Season 4 on the show. Sorry that Season 3 was so short and that it's been a while since we last did an episode, but that is because we have been very busy with a different kind of project that we are currently finishing up, and we hope to have it for you soon. But anyway, we are back where we need to be, which is right here in front of this microphone talking about sports with you guys, and we have a lot to cover. So let's get right to it. The first thing I wanted to talk about, it's a little bit of old news, but we haven't been able to talk about it here on the show, and I definitely had an opinion, and that is Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys and his suspension. During the offseason, he was cited for domestic abuse issues, and he was initially suspended for 6 games. But he appealed, and this appeal dragged on and on and on. So he played to start the year, and the appeal, or I believe his suspension was reduced to 4 games, maybe not. I have to look that up. But he kept appealing, and the appeal dragged out until the middle of the season, when he finally said, "Okay, fine, I will take my suspension." The issue here being that he waited till the middle of the season when the Cowboys, when the season was in full swing and things were starting to get important as far as playoffs were concerned. Then he takes his suspension, and the Cowboys become one-dimensional, lose games they need to win, and by the time Ezekiel comes back in week 16 or 17, the Cowboys season is effectively over. So, if he had taken the suspension at the beginning of the year, they would have known about it, they would have prepared for it, and then they could have dealt with it and then had him back for the final 10 games of the year. But because he appealed, because it took so long, as these things often do, and then he finally gave up at the most crucial part of the season for the Cowboys, and they missed the playoffs. Now that's crazy, but that's not the issue that I have with the whole suspension. The issue is Ezekiel Elliott was suspended for domestic abuse issues, domestic violence type thing, and he was able to appeal that. That's the issue that I have. Anytime, with all the domestic violence issues, with all the those types of issues that we've seen in sports and especially football, it seems, those types of suspensions should not be able to be appealed. If you're charged or even whatever, and suspended for that, if that comes down on you, that means there's proof enough or whatever to do that. And I don't think there's anything you could say to warrant a lessening of punishment in a situation like that. Now, there are certain suspensions that are appealable, like Tom Brady's thing with Deflategate. You know how I feel about that. I'm not a huge Tom Brady fan, but I don't think he should have been suspended 4 games. Ray Rice, similar domestic issues. They suspended him for 4 games, I believe, and then video of what they already knew happened came, and they suspended him indefinitely. That was different because they already handed down a suspension and then added to it, which I thought was unnecessary. This, I personally don't think domestic issues and suspensions related to that should be appealable by the player. I just don't. I do not think that is the right thing to do. I do not think that is something that the NFL should do. I think that domestic violence and domestic disturbance issues should be on the no appeal list for the NFL and for all other sports as well. Drew Brees is what I want to talk about next. They were recently eliminated from the playoffs by the Vikings. That's a whole other thing. But what I want to talk about is, everybody mentions, Tom Brady being the greatest of all time, and there was a debate between him and Peyton Manning for a long time, and you still got to throw in Joe Montana and Troy Aikman and names like that. Nobody ever talks about Drew Brees being one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and I think they should. Sure, he doesn't have he has one Super Bowl, and he's and Tom Brady has 5, and Peyton Manning has 2, and even Eli has 2, and so he's only got one Super Bowl, so that doesn't work in his favor. But statistically, Drew Brees is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, quarterback of all time. And here are just a couple of examples that I think we should at least I'm not saying he is the greatest, but we should at least talk about him being one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He's 3rd all time in passing yards, behind Brett Favre and Peyton Manning. The names you did not hear in front of his, Tom Brady. He's 2nd all time in completions. I know that's a weird stat, but it's an all-time list, and it's hard to do. And he's behind only Brett Favre. Both Peyton Manning and Tom Brady are behind him in that category. And you want to hear something with a little more substance. He's tied for 3rd all-time in touchdowns with Tom Brady at 488. Only Brett Favre and Peyton Manning are ahead of him in that category. And both Brady and Brees will hit the 500 touchdown mark this next season. So they'll both move up the list pretty soon together. But they're never talked about together. They're never talked about side by side, Brady and Brees, as they should be. And the most impressive stat to me, and here you go, Drew Brees holds the record for most consecutive games with a touchdown pass, and that record is 54. That's a widely known stat. It's impressive, but here's the more impressive part. On the list of such streaks, consecutive games with a touchdown pass, Drew Brees is on there twice in the top 5. And those streaks are a week apart. What does that mean? Okay, so his record-setting streak of 54 straight games was snapped on November 25th, 2012. His other streak, his streak of 45, which is 5th on the list, was started on December 9th, 2012. So his streak ended, his 54-game streak ended, and he turned right around and started another one 2 weeks later. So, essentially, with the exception of the 1-2 games in the middle there, Drew Brees has thrown touchdowns in every single game for 6 years. For 6 years, Drew Brees never missed, except for once, that game in the middle, which would be like December 1st or whatever. So he's been the model of consistency in the league. He doesn't miss a lot of time to injuries, neither does Tom Brady. But Tom Brady, he has the size, he has the speed, he has everything. Drew Brees was always like, you're too small to play in this league, and you're too slow, and your arm's not strong enough, and all these things, all these doubters that he had. And say what you will about Tom Brady, being drafted 199 and everything, that he wasn't, that of the 6 quarterbacks drafted in front of him, none of them were in the league as long as he was and everything. But Tom Brady was never doubted to have the size or anything like that. Drew Brees was always undersized and always said, you're not going to make it. And here he is putting up the same type numbers as Tom Brady. So I think it at least serves to have a conversation about Drew Brees being one of the greatest of all time. And for another thing, Tom Brady had Belichick. He had, a good defense with Teddy Bruschi, Rodney Harris, and those guys. He had Ty Law. He had all these guys around him. He had, Bill O'Brien as his quarterback's coach. Drew Brees spent the first part of his career in San Diego, a notoriously poorly run franchise, as they consistently, have these quarterbacks that they don't put put the right kind of people around, and he was essentially replaced by Phillip Rivers, who people talk about as being a future Hall of Famer and all this stuff. I think that is absurd. But the point being, Drew Brees spent the first part of his career in San Diego, then was replaced, and then went to New Orleans, who for a while, except for their Super Bowl run, hasn't really had the best teams. They've had a few good players here and there. Until this year, their defense hasn't been that good. So Drew Brees has essentially carried these teams that he's been on for the most part of his career. This year, he got the opportunity to take a bit of a back seat because the defense was better and the running back combination of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara really took the pressure off of him. But he still had a great year, as did the Saints, and he single-handedly led them back to almost single-handedly led them back in the game against the Vikings before they ultimately lost on what was an incredible play at the end of the game. So I think we have to at least discuss Drew Brees in the conversation of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. ESPN has done it again, has put their foot in their mouth as they do these days. And what happened here is that, obviously when a team wins a championship, they get invited to the White House to meet with the president. It's what happens all the time. It's what is tradition. So the Houston Astros won the World Series. They get invited to the White House to meet President Trump. They accept, which wasn't really an issue, accepting until Trump came into office. Everybody would always go. It was an honor. But, since Trump was made into office, teams have declined to go. The Cleveland declined to go. Golden State declined to go. Sorry, not Cleveland. Golden State declined to go. The Patriots declined, and or I think certain players declined for the Patriots, and certain guys went. But the Astros as a team accepted the invitation. But then ESPN comes out and basically throws a tantrum on live television. Their anchors do. I won't mention the anchor's name specifically, about accepting the invitation. And his quote was, "They've made a grave error in judgment. They're on the wrong side of history." Okay, that anchor and that network is entitled to their opinion, as is everybody. But I will say again, as I have said before and will continue to say, people who watch ESPN and other sports networks do not care about the political opinions of those people or that network. You cannot be okay with the Astros going to visit Trump. You can be totally fine with it. I have no problem with it because, they won. And that is a long-standing tradition to celebrate the winners in American sports, be invited to the White House. So why would you not accept? Okay, you don't agree with the president. That's fine. But he is the president and he invited you. I don't have a problem either way. If they wanted to go, if they not wanted to go. What I have a problem with is the people over at the worldwide leader in sports just completely forgetting that it's about celebrating sports and saying, oh, you guys are the villains of history because you accepted an invitation to celebrate your accomplishment, and I don't agree with that, so I'm going to throw a tantrum on live television. One more time. Sports fans do not care about the political opinions of sportscasters. For a long time, sportscasters are told, do not let your bias to your sports teams on the camera. And a lot of the times we don't know who the sports anchors are rooting for because, they don't want to appear biased. Kirk Herbstreit isn't even allowed to make picks on games that he's calling because they're worried about him being biased. So this certain anchor and the anchors surrounding him opening their mouths about, oh, well this is the wrong side of history. This is grave error. Nobody cares that that's what you think. You're not making a statement for a network. You're not making a statement for a Democratic candidate. You're not making a statement for the Houston Astros. You are saying what you believe on a topic that has nothing to do with the sport itself. The Houston Astros did something amazing, and you're villainizing them because they accepted an invitation that is fully within their rights to accept. And I am tired of ESPN turning into a political platform. And it shows that I'm not the only one, because they recently had to lay off, 100, 150 people because ratings are dropping because they're getting more political in their programming. Sports fans do not care. They turn to your network to watch sports. A lot of the times to get away from the political stuff. If you want to watch politics, go to CNN, go to Fox News, go to MSNBC, go to the evening news, go any other network on television. We turn to ESPN because we want to watch a game, because we want to watch highlights, because we want to wind down from the already stressful day we've had. If we turn to your network and you're opening your mouth about Trump and about, the wrong side of history and about they shouldn't do this because we don't like the president, that's not what your network is for. If you're called the worldwide leader in sports, be that. Be the worldwide leader in sports. That's it. On to a bit of a happier story. To go along with that, the NBA and the NFL have become increasingly more divisive in the way that they handle things, from anthem protests to athletes sticking their noses in places they don't belong, to building super teams and ratings dropping and everything like that. Baseball makes things happen. And what I mean by that is baseball, they know their community. They know who their fans are. They know what their fans are there for. The anthem thing never really caught on over there because it's America's pastime, because there's pride, and because there's tradition, and because there's things there that they know that that's not what baseball is about. Baseball tends to be a way that when things need to happen in baseball, they happen in baseball. Like the year that they had the Boston bombing, the Red Sox rallied and won the World Series. The year in what was one of the most tumultuous and divisive presidential elections in history, and how stressful that was, and how dividing that was. The Cubs ended the longest drought in sports. And then this year, when Houston was ravaged by Hurricane Harvey, the Astros rallied and brought that city a championship. Now, what was great, what has happened now, is the St. Louis Cardinals made a really classy move. They have, a lot of times you as an organization, you draft somebody or you sign somebody that you really love, that you would protect, build a wall around so nobody can get to, like your coveted guy. And for the Cardinals, this guy, it was Stephen Piscotty. Like this guy, they love this guy. This guy is, they wanted to build their team around him and youth around him as their rebuild would go. But Stephen Piscotty's mother, who lives in the Bay Area, fell ill. So, in a classy move, the Cardinals traded their prized possession to Oakland so that he could be near his mother while she's dealing with this sickness that she has. And I just commend the Cardinals for doing this, for making a move, because it couldn't have been easy trading their guy away, but it was a move that needed to be made for him and for his family. And who knows, maybe one day there will be a reunion with Piscotty and the Cardinals. I personally am rooting for that. Hopefully, his mother's health gets better, and he has a good season in Oakland. I'm glad he's able to be close to his family. So good job to St. Louis for making that move. All right, it's that time of week for Roman's Ridiculous 6, the first Ridiculous 6 of 2018. Let's jump right in. Okay, so if I were to come up to you on the street and I would ask you who's the national champions, most of you would say the University of Alabama, because, they won the playoff, won the national championship. But that's not how everybody feels. Number one on Roman's Ridiculous 6, the UCF Knights had themselves declared the national champions because they finished the season undefeated and they were the only team to do so. And they actually have a signed letter from Governor Rick Scott in Florida saying that UCF is the national champions of college football. Not only that, they had a parade, they had t-shirts made, the city of Orlando came out to the championship parade, the national championship parade for the UCF Knights. This is absolutely mind-boggling. Has the generation of entitlement and not wanting to offend anybody come so far as to do this? UCF and hundreds of other teams have been in the NCAA long enough to know that this is how it works. Okay, in, 2007 or 8, when the University of Michigan believed that they should be in the championship game against Ohio State, but Florida got in instead, did Michigan go and declare themselves national champions? The first year of the playoff, when that fifth team was left out, did they do it? This year when Ohio State was left out, did they go and do it? No, because you don't do that. That's not how it works. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm national champion, so that's it. So I'm going to petition the governor, and that's it." No, that's not how that works. What, you think the Atlanta Falcons, petitioned to have themselves be Super Bowl champions because they were up at half? No. That's not what works. That's just because you say. So if I wake up in the morning and I say I'm a millionaire, does that mean I have $1 million? Does that mean that just because I say it means it's true? No, because there have been thousands, millions of people all over the country saying Donald Trump is not my president. Guess what? He is. Proving that just because you say something does not mean it's true. I am happy for the season that UCF football had. The historic season, the undefeated season, going undefeated in the regular season and beating Auburn in the Peach Bowl. I'm happy for Scott Frost and that team and everything. But just because you're undefeated doesn't mean you're the champion. UCF as a school sounds like my mom when she doesn't understand conference championships and she thinks that that's the national championship. UCF right now sounds like a whiny child that cannot deal with the fact that their schedule was not strong enough to warrant them being in the top 10. Because it wasn't like they were 5 or 6. They were 12 when they played in the Peach Bowl. They were ranked 12th. They were not even close to being, if the playoff expanded to 8 or 12 teams, they would barely get in at 12. If it expanded to 8 teams, they'd still miss, and they're complaining. It's because of your schedule. We're not taking anything away from you winning all your games. Good for you. What we're taking away is you're in a conference that's not going to be seen as one of the better ones because of the competition you play. I want to see you play Alabama. I want to see you play one of these bigger guys and see what happens. Yeah, you beat Auburn. Good for you. But Auburn, I don't think should have been as highly rated as they were. Because, yeah, they beat Georgia. Yeah, they beat Alabama. But, those were those two teams' worst games of the season, and their losses were to bad teams. Auburn was a very Jekyll and Hyde team all season, and you got them when they were Hyde, basically. And Alabama and Georgia proved that they belonged in the national championship. Oklahoma proved that they belong in the playoff. So UCF had a good season, but you're not national champions. And shame on Rick Scott for going along with that. As the governor of the state, for not having more common sense. Ridiculous 6, number 2. And I'll make this quick because they're on here a lot. The Ball family. LaVar has had no shortage of critiques for Luke Walton and the Lakers. LiAngelo, the middle son, has now decided that for no other reason when he was in Beijing, China, to steal some sunglasses and get himself arrested in a foreign country, having to be bailed out by the U.S. government, to which LaVar will give no credit. And LaMelo, the 16-year-old, has been pulled out of high school by his father because he didn't like the job the coach was doing, and now the father is homeschooling LaMelo. Well, not anymore because now they play in Lithuania. So, LaVar is a man who, when this all started, claimed to have this master plan. And everything was going to according to plan for a while. Lonzo made it to the Lakers. LiAngelo was going to UCLA. LaMelo was the best high school player in the country. And now it's the wheels are falling off. The two younger boys get shipped off to a B league in Lithuania. It's not even the best league in Lithuania. And the other night they combined for 0 points in their game. LaVar has tried to go global with a brand that seems to be falling apart, and it just this big baller thing is more like a gimmick than a legitimate company than it ever was before. And LaVar has proven that he really has no idea what he is doing. They have been given a reality show on Facebook, and anybody who watches it, the younger son LaMelo really needs that maturation from high school to college, really needs as a basketball player and as a human person. But looking at it, I don't think his father has gotten that maturation. And now, him being homeschooled or pulled out of school altogether, he's not going to get that. He's just going to be the same kid for the next 40 years, like his dad. The only person in all of this that seems to know what the heck they're doing is the person that it was all centered around to begin with, and that's Lonzo. Lonzo is a quiet guy who just goes and plays for the Lakers, and he's a very underrated player because he's not going to score 50, and the Lakers aren't winning every game right now because they're rebuilding. And he's the only one that seems to be doing this whole thing right, in that he's not talking and keeping his nose clean and doing what he has to do. Doing what he's paid to do, and so good job for him, but the rest of that family is kind of a mess. Number 3 on Roman's Ridiculous 6, Russell Westbrook admitted the last couple of weeks that he will not be actively recruiting his current teammate Paul George, who is a free agent this summer, to return to the Oklahoma City Thunder, stating that Paul George knows what we can do. If he wants to win, he'll be back. Okay, that may be technically true, but isn't it your job as the leader of the team to say, hey man, you should stay here because we could do something awesome? For you to say he knows what is here and I don't have to recruit him, that is the most selfish thing you could say. That makes you sound like a jerk. It makes you sound like you don't want him there because you love being the star, and now that there's another big 3 there with you and him and Carmelo, the spotlight is less on you because they want to see what everybody else does. So it sounds more like Much like UCF, a whiny kid being like, well, I know I'm the best. I don't have to tell somebody else why I'm the best. I don't have to defend myself to anyone because I am the best, and that's the way it is. Number 4 on Roman's Ridiculous 6, Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, recently signed a contract extension to remain at his post, a post that not really many people around the NFL want him to keep because of the way that he's ruled the league in his tenure. But the ridiculous part of this is the contract itself. In the contract, it stipulated that Roger Goodell would make $50 million a year and have a private jet for life. Now, while the $50 million a year is only for the duration of the contract, the private jet, again, is for life. $50 million is more than I think any athlete makes annually in the entire American sports landscape. That's more than LeBron James makes in salary. I'm sure he makes more than that with endorsements, but that's more than he makes in salary. That's more than Tom Brady makes in salary. That's more than Bryce Harper or any of the biggest names in sports make in salary. And so the league, so basically the villain of a league that's already trending downward lost 10 million in viewers, or not, sorry, 10 million. And what was that number? But lost viewers at an obscene rate this year as opposed to last year. For him to make more than everybody else in a league that is struggling, and for him not to be liked very much in that league is, let's see what the hang on, from 2016 to 2017 the viewership dropped almost 10%. So, in a league that is trending downward, where the head of the league is seen as the villain of said league, he makes more than every player, every coach, most owners, and now he wants a private jet for life. Not just for the duration of however long he's commissioner, but after he retires, he wants to keep that private jet, so when he retires, if he wants to go on vacation to Paris or Bermuda or Bora Bora or whatever, he's flying on the NFL's dime. For the rest of his life, he wants to ride like a king on the NFL for life. He wants the NFL to pay for this, and they agreed to it. So Roger Goodell has proven with his latest contract extension just how big his head is and how much he thinks of himself. So I find that to be absurd. Number 5 on Roman's Ridiculous 6. This is just a general thing that I find silly. Free agency wish list. We see this in every sport. Every time a season ends, guys become free agents, and teams start testing the waters on certain guys who they can add to their team and whatever. But the most popular term that we see in these situations is wish list or free agency wish list. And that basically just means, well, we wish this player could be on here. So basically every free agent ever would be on anyone's list. But I always think it's funny when you see Padres have on wish list for Eric Hosmer. Braves are kicking the tires on Christian Yelich. The Texans are looking for Peyton Manning, and so wish list is just a term to be like, who do you want? It's not who can you afford, who would fit, what would you have to do. It's who do you want, which the answer to that should be everything. So we should outlaw the term wish list from sports because it's just it doesn't get anywhere. It's a non-starter. So I just think that's silly. I just wanted to throw that in there. Number 6 on Roman's Ridiculous 6, Andre Drummond of the Detroit Pistons during a road game this last week shushed the crowd after making a free throw. Okay, here's the problem. It was the home crowd, and the Pistons were on the road, so he shushed the home crowd, and his team was down by 30. So if you're on the road, 1, the crowd has a right to taunt or yell or be as noisy as they want to. 2, if you're down 30, game's over. If you're down at 30 at any point, the game's pretty much over. So, really, you had nothing to shush. I understand competitively, if you do something against what the opposing crowd is rooting for, that you're competitive and you're gonna be like, hey, stop that! Like I did what you didn't think I could do. But you're down 30. Like have some class, have some decorum, and know the situation, which he clearly did not when he shushed the home crowd down 30. So that was ridiculous. That is all I have for Roman's Ridiculous 6. Now let's move on to our Emperor of the Week segment. But because we have been off the air for a while, I've gone for the past about month or so and picked two of them. My first Emperor of the Week is Derrick Henry. In the AFC wildcard game against the Chiefs, Mariota and the Titans were struggling to get offense going against the heavily favored Chiefs, who were up pretty big early. I think it was 21-0 at one point. But it wasn't until Derrick Henry, the second-year player who was starting this game, who was getting his first career start due to DeMarco Murray's injury, had himself a game. He rushed 23 times for 156 yards in that game. Kind of gave the Titans offense a spark, and what ultimately ended up being an epic comeback for Tennessee, which included a Marcus Mariota pass to himself. But nothing can be taken away from Derrick Henry. While he did not, I'm not sure he had a touchdown in that game. His 23 carries for 156 yards, which were both career highs, by the way, helped propel the Titans to an unexpected victory against the Chiefs. So he is our first Emperor of the Week. Our second Emperor of the Week is a man known simply as Tua, mostly because he's from Hawaii and he has a very complicated last name, and I don't want to embarrass myself by trying to say it on the air. So we're going to call him Tua. Alabama's freshman backup quarterback. True freshman, had limited snaps in all season, and Alabama was really struggling on offense in the first half of the national championship game against Georgia. The running game was pretty flat, and Jalen Hurts looked lost on the field. So at halftime, with the Crimson Tide down surprisingly 13-0, Nick Saban took a risk and decided to put in the backup quarterback, true freshman, to start the second half. And it's a good thing he did, because in one half of football, Tua comes in, goes 14 of 24 for 166 yards and 3 touchdowns, and adds 27 yards on the ground. And Alabama ends up winning 26-23 in overtime, thanks to a 40-some-odd yard pass from Tua to end the game, proving to be one of the best decisions Nick Saban has ever made, because Tua I'm going to try and say it. Tagovailoa has a bigger arm than Hurts. He is sturdier than Hurts. He has a better idea of when to run and when to throw than Hurts does. And he provided the spark in the biggest game of the year for his team and the biggest game of his life, and and he likely secured himself a starting position going into next year. So Derrick Henry and Tua Tagovailoa are my two Emperors of the Week. They share that honor this week. That is all the time we have for Empire Sports Talk. It's good to be back on the air with you guys, and we hope to have a regular occurrence this season, and we'll let you know when that project gets finished up for you. This is your host, Roman Gennaro, signing off. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Spreaker.com, and get in on the conversation. See you next time.